The world of Dragon Ball was no stranger to chaos, but the events that unfolded during the Cell games had left an indelible mark on Earth's defenders. The Z fighters had faced insurmountable odds before, but the emergence of Cell, a bioengineered monstrosity designed to surpass even the mightiest warriors, had pushed them to their limits. Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan had risen to the challenge, but the cost had been steep. Now, in the aftermath of Cell's defeat, a new threat loomed, one that would test the bonds of friendship and the limits of human ingenuity. The story begins in the quiet aftermath of the Cell games. The world was at peace, but the scars of battle remained. Krillin, the bald-headed martial artist and one of Earth's most loyal defenders, had always been a man of humble origins. Unlike his Saiyan comrades, he lacked the innate power of a warrior race, but his determination and resourcefulness had earned him a place among the Z fighters. However, Krillin had always felt the weight of his limitations. He had watched as Goku and Vegeta ascended to new heights of power, while he struggled to keep pace. It was this sense of inadequacy that drove him to seek a way to transcend his human limitations. Unbeknownst to his friends, Krillin had been secretly working with Dr. Briefs, the brilliant scientist and father of Bulma, to develop a new technology that could enhance a human's physical and energy capabilities. Drawing inspiration from the designs of Dr. Garo, the creator of the androids, Krillin and Dr. Briefs had developed a prototype cybernetic enhancement system. This system, when integrated with a human body, could amplify strength, speed, and energy output to levels rivaling even the most powerful Saiyans. Krillin saw this as his chance to finally stand on equal footing with his friends and protect Earth without relying on others. The procedure was risky, but Krillin was determined. After weeks of preparation, the day of the operation arrived. As the machines hummed and the lights flickered in Dr. Brief's lab, Krillin lay on the operating table, his body wired with countless sensors. The process was agonizing, but Krillin endured, driven by his unwavering resolve. When it was over, he awoke to find himself transformed. His body was now a seamless fusion of flesh and machine, his energy reserves vastly expanded, and his senses heightened to superhuman levels. He was no longer just Krillin, he was the first human to willingly become a cyborg, a new kind of warrior. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the Z fighters, Cell had not been completely eradicated. A fragment of his core had survived the explosion that had supposedly ended his reign of terror. Over time, this fragment had regenerated, and Cell had returned, stronger and more determined than ever. His power had grown exponentially, and he now possessed the strength of a Super Saiyan 2. His goal was simple, to prove his superiority by defeating the Z fighters and reclaiming his place as the ultimate life form. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the Earth. Krillin, now a cyborg, had just completed his training and was eager to test his newfound abilities. He had no idea that Cell had returned, but fate would soon bring them together. The battle began in the ruins of the Cell Games arena, a desolate wasteland that bore the scars of their previous encounter. Krillin arrived first, his cybernetic enhancements humming with energy. He could feel the power coursing through his veins, a sensation unlike anything he had ever experienced. As he stood there, surveying the battlefield, a familiar presence made itself known. Cell emerged from the shadows, his golden aura blazing with the intensity of a Super Saiyan 2. His voice was cold and mocking as he addressed Krillin. "So, the weakest of the Z fighters has come to challenge me? How amusing." Krillin clenched his fists, his mechanical eyes narrowing with determination. "I'm not the same as I was before, Cell. This time, I'll be the one to end you." The tension between them was palpable, the air crackling with energy as they prepared to clash. The battle began with a blinding burst of speed as Krillin launched himself at Cell, his cybernetic legs propelling him forward with incredible force. He unleashed a flurry of punches and kicks, each strike amplified by his mechanical enhancements. Cell, however, was no ordinary opponent. He effortlessly dodged Krillin's attacks, his movements fluid and precise. With a smirk, he countered with a devastating energy blast, forcing Krillin to leap into the air to avoid it. Krillin retaliated with a Kamehameha wave, the blue energy surging from his hands with unprecedented power. The beam collided with Cell's energy blast, creating a massive explosion that shook the ground beneath them. As the dust settled, Krillin transformed, his cybernetic enhancements glowing with a golden light as he tapped into his full power. His energy surged, rivaling that of a Super Saiyan. Cell's smirk widened. "Impressive," he said. "But let's see how you fare against this." With a roar, Cell unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one aimed with deadly precision. Krillin countered with his own energy attacks, the two warriors locked in a deadly dance of destruction. The battlefield became a maelstrom of light and sound as their attacks collided, each one more powerful than the last. Despite his enhancements, Krillin was struggling to keep up with Cell's overwhelming power. Cell's speed and strength were beyond anything he had ever faced, and it was clear that he would need more than just raw power to win. Drawing on his years of training and experience, Krillin began to adapt, using his newfound abilities in creative ways. He combined his energy attacks with his physical strikes, creating a relentless assault that forced Cell to stay on the defensive. For a moment, it seemed as though Krillin might have the upper hand. But Cell was not so easily defeated. With a roar, he unleashed his full power, his aura exploding with the intensity of a Super Saiyan 2. The ground beneath him cracked and shattered as he charged at Krillin, his fists glowing with energy. Krillin braced himself, his cybernetic arms crossed in front of him as he absorbed the impact. The force of the blow sent him skidding backward, but he refused to fall. With a determined yell, he pushed back, his energy flaring as he prepared for the next phase of the battle. As the fight raged on, it became clear that this was more than just a battle of strength, it was a test of will. Krillin's transformation had given him the power to stand against Cell, but it was his unyielding spirit that would determine the outcome. The fate of the Earth hung in the balance, and Krillin knew that he could not afford to fail. With a final, defiant roar, he charged at Cell, his cybernetic enhancements glowing with the light of his determination. The battle was far from over, and the true test of Krillin's resolve was yet to come. The battlefield was a chaotic storm of energy and destruction, the air thick with the crackling of power and the echoes of desperate cries. Krillin, now transformed into a formidable android, stood at the center of the maelstrom, his mechanical enhancements glowing with a cold, otherworldly light. His once human eyes now glinted with a mix of determination and sorrow, for he knew the stakes of this fight. Across from him stood Cell, his perfect form radiating an overwhelming aura of power, his smirk dripping with arrogance. The gap between their strength was undeniable. Cell had achieved his Super Saiyan 2 form, his energy surging like a tidal wave. But Krillin refused to back down. He had been given this chance, this power, and he would not let his friends down. The fight began with a deafening roar as Cell lunged forward, his movements a blur of speed and precision. Krillin barely had time to react, his android reflexes kicking in as he dodged a devastating punch that shattered the ground beneath him. He countered with a flurry of energy blasts, each one aimed with pinpoint accuracy, but Cell swatted them away effortlessly, his laughter echoing across the battlefield. "Is this all you've got, Krillin?" Cell taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. "I expected more from a man who dared to challenge me." Krillin gritted his teeth, his mechanical heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. He knew he couldn't match Cell's raw power, but he had something Cell didn't: strategy, ingenuity, and the will to protect those he loved. Krillin's movements became more calculated, his android enhancements allowing him to analyze Cell's patterns with inhuman precision. He darted around Cell, using his smaller size to his advantage, striking from angles Cell couldn't anticipate. Each blow was infused with energy, each strike a testament to Krillin's determination. But Cell was relentless, his Super Saiyan 2 power allowing him to shrug off even the most devastating attacks. He retaliated with a barrage of energy blasts, forcing Krillin to weave and dodge with all his might. The ground erupted in explosions, the shockwave sending debris flying in every direction. Krillin's body ached, his mechanical parts straining under the pressure, but he pushed through the pain, his mind focused on one goal: to buy time for his friends to arrive. As the fight raged on, Krillin began to push past his limits, his android body adapting to the strain. He unleashed a new technique, one he had been developing in secret, a fusion of his Destructo Disc and his energy manipulation abilities. With a roar, he summoned a massive, spinning disc of energy, its edges razor-sharp and glowing with an intense light. He hurled it at Cell, the disc slicing through the air with terrifying speed. Cell's eyes widened in surprise, but he managed to deflect it at the last second, the disc grazing his arm and leaving a deep gash. "Not bad," Cell admitted, his smirk faltering for the first time. "But you'll need more than that to defeat me." Krillin didn't respond, his mind racing as he searched for a new strategy. He knew he couldn't keep up this pace forever, his energy reserves were dwindling, and Cell showed no signs of tiring. But then, something unexpected happened. A surge of power coursed through Krillin's body, his android enhancements reacting to his sheer willpower. His eyes glowed with a fierce light as he tapped into a new level of strength, his energy skyrocketing. This is it," Krillin muttered, his voice filled with determination. "I won't let you win, Cell. Not while I still have breath in my body." The battle reached a new level of intensity as Krillin unleashed his newfound power, his attacks becoming faster and more devastating. He launched himself at Cell, his fists a blur of motion as he landed blow after blow. Cell staggered under the assault, his smirk replaced by a look of genuine surprise. But he quickly regained his composure, his own power surging as he countered with a devastating energy wave. Krillin barely managed to deflect it, his body trembling from the effort. The two fighters clashed again and again, their movements a blur of speed and power, the battlefield shaking with the force of their blows. As the fight dragged on, Krillin's body began to fail him, his mechanical enhancements reaching their limits. But he refused to give up, his mind focused on one final, desperate plan. With a roar, he gathered all his remaining energy, his body glowing with an intense light. He launched himself at Cell, his movements a blur of speed and precision. Cell tried to counter, but Krillin was too fast, his attacks too relentless. With a final, devastating blow, Krillin struck Cell with all his might, the force of the impact sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Cell staggered back, his body trembling from the force of the blow. For a moment, it seemed as though Krillin had done the impossible, he had defeated Cell. But then, Cell began to laugh, his voice filled with malice. "Impressive, Krillin," he said, his smirk returning. "But you're still no match for me." With a roar, Cell unleashed his full power, his energy surging to new heights. Krillin's heart sank as he realized the truth. He had pushed himself to his limits, but it still wasn't enough. As Cell prepared to deliver the final blow, Krillin closed his eyes, his mind filled with memories of his friends and the life he had fought so hard to protect. He had given it his all, and that was enough. But just as Cell was about to strike, a familiar voice rang out across the battlefield. "Krillin! We're here!" Krillin's eyes snapped open as Goku and the others arrived, their presence filling him with renewed hope. The battle was far from over, but Krillin knew he wasn't alone anymore. Together, they would face Cell and protect the world they loved. The fight had reached its climax, and the fate of the Earth hung in the balance. The battlefield was a chaotic storm of energy and destruction, the air thick with the acrid scent of burning earth and the deafening roar of colliding forces. Krillin, now fully transformed into a cybernetic warrior, stood at the epicenter of the maelstrom, his mechanical body gleaming under the harsh light of the setting sun. His once human eyes now glowed with a cold, calculated intensity, but beneath the steel and circuitry, the heart of a hero still beat fiercely. Across from him stood Cell, his perfect form radiating an aura of overwhelming power, his smirk dripping with arrogance. The stakes had never been higher, and the fate of the universe hung in the balance. Krillin launched himself forward, his movements a blur of precision and speed. His mechanical enhancements allowed him to push beyond the limits of his former self, but even with his newfound strength, he knew he was outmatched. Cell's power was on par with a Super Saiyan 2, a level of strength that Krillin had never faced before. Yet, he refused to back down. His first strike was a feint, a calculated maneuver to test Cell's defenses. The android countered effortlessly, swatting Krillin aside with a casual backhand that sent him skidding across the ground. Krillin gritted his teeth, his systems recalibrating instantly as he sprang back into the fray. The battle escalated rapidly, each exchange of blows sending shockwaves rippling through the landscape. Krillin's attacks were relentless, a combination of martial arts mastery and cybernetic precision. He unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one calibrated to exploit the slightest weakness in Cell's defenses. But Cell was no ordinary foe. His movements were fluid and unpredictable, his power seemingly limitless. He countered Krillin's assault with a devastating energy wave, the sheer force of it carving a canyon into the earth. Krillin barely managed to deflect the attack, his arms trembling under the strain. As the fight wore on, Krillin began to feel the strain of his mechanical body. His systems were overheating, the constant drain on his energy reserves pushing him to the brink. But he couldn't afford to falter. He thought of his friends, of the countless lives that depended on him, and he dug deep, summoning every ounce of strength he had left. With a roar of defiance, he unleashed his ultimate technique, the Qianzan. The razor-sharp energy disc spun through the air with deadly precision, aimed straight for Cell's neck. For a moment, it seemed like the attack would succeed, but Cell's reflexes were too fast. He dodged at the last second, the Qianzan grazing his shoulder and leaving a deep gash. Cell's smirk widened as he wiped the blood from his wound. "Impressive," he sneered, "but not nearly enough." He raised his hand, gathering energy for a final, devastating attack. Krillin braced himself, his mind racing for a solution. He knew he couldn't win through brute force alone. He needed to outthink his opponent, to find a way to turn the tide. As Cell's energy blast surged toward him, Krillin made a split-second decision. He activated his built-in teleportation device, a last-ditch effort that he had been saving for this very moment. In an instant, he disappeared from sight, reappearing directly behind Cell. With all the strength he could muster, Krillin delivered a powerful blow to Cell's back, aiming for the weak spot he had identified earlier. The impact was enough to stagger the android, but it wasn't enough to defeat him. Cell spun around, his eyes blazing with fury, and delivered a crushing punch to Krillin's chest. The force of the blow sent Krillin flying, his mechanical body sparking and sputtering as it struggled to remain functional. He crashed to the ground, his vision flickering as he fought to stay conscious. But Krillin wasn't done yet. As Cell approached, confident in his victory, Krillin reached deep within himself, tapping into a reserve of power he didn't know he had. His body began to glow with a brilliant light, his energy levels skyrocketing as he achieved a breakthrough he had never thought possible. In that moment, he transcended his limitations, his cybernetic form merging with his inner strength to create something entirely new. He rose to his feet, his aura blazing with intensity, and faced Cell with renewed determination. The final clash was a spectacle of raw power and unyielding will. Krillin's attacks were faster, stronger, and more precise than ever before, each strike landing with devastating force. Cell, for the first time, began to show signs of strain. His movement slowed, his confidence wavering as he realized that Krillin was no longer the same opponent he had faced earlier. The tide of the battle had turned, and Krillin was now the one in control. With a final, earth-shattering blast of energy, Krillin unleashed everything he had left. The attack struck Cell head-on, engulfing him in a blinding explosion of light and heat. When the dust settled, Cell was gone, his body reduced to nothing more than ash. Krillin stood victorious, his mechanical body battered and broken, but his spirit unbroken. He had done the impossible, defeating an opponent far beyond his own power level through sheer determination and ingenuity. The aftermath of the battle was a mix of relief and sorrow. Krillin's friends rushed to his side, their faces a mixture of awe and concern. His transformation had saved them all, but at a great cost. His body was beyond repair, and he knew that he could never return to his former self. Yet, he had no regrets. His actions had changed the course of history, ensuring a future where his friends and loved ones could live in peace. As the sun set on the battlefield, Krillin looked out at the horizon, a sense of fulfillment washing over him. He had proven that even the smallest, most unassuming warrior could rise to the occasion and make a difference. His journey had come to an end, but his legacy would live on, inspiring future generations to never give up, no matter the odds. The universe had been forever changed by his actions, and the bonds of friendship and courage he had forged would endure for all time.